here to talk to you about mangroves and why they're fantastic. A little bit of disclaimer, I don't actually study mangroves. I study cottonwoods and aspens and their chemical ecology. However, mangroves are far and away my favorite plant because of the cool adaptations and their lifestyle. Plus, who doesn't like tropical plants? So hopefully you'll be able to learn some things and realize why we should save the Earth so we don't have to travel through the universe to new planets, everything. So a quick little overview as I get started here. So I'm going to talk about what are mangroves, the distribution, a little bit about their evolution, their adaptations to their unique environment, the benefits of mangroves, and some of the threats facing them. So what are mangroves? First off, they're estuarine trees. All right, I'm hoping everybody knows what a tree is, but if you don't know what an estuary is, that's when you have seawater and freshwater. They converge, they get a little mixy soup going on, and then you got like the rainforests of the sea. Estuaries are some of the most productive environments in the aquatic environments in the world. Just from the sheer amount of nutrients coming off from the land combined with some of the other fun stuff from the sea. So these are trees that live in estuaries. They live in a salty environment. They are an example of convergence. So when I say convergence, if you're not familiar with evolution, you've got divergence. So if you think about how humans, we share traits with like other primates, so like orangutans and gorillas, etc. We share a common ancestor, but we have diverged. Mangroves are evidence of convergence. So they have distant lineages of plants that exist in a similar environment and they converge on traits. So thus we have 16 different families of plants. Yes, plants have families, and 54 different species of mangroves. So talking about the United States, yes, we're in Wisconsin here, and it did snow today, but talking about Florida mangroves, I'll reference these a few times throughout the talk. We've got the red mangrove. You can see the species name, genus name, and their species name. And so red mangroves are in the Malpighiales, so those are like the willow family, not family, but order, willow, where willows are. Then you've got the lamiales, so the black mangroves in that, so those are going to be like your mint order. And then the white mangroves in the myrtales, so that's like a eucalyptus order of plants. So you can see there's vastly different lineages of plants that have converged on similar traits. And so this is just another example sort of thing. So you can see this was a study done in 2019 where they took a genome of the chloroplast of about 14 different mangrove species. Those are in red. So we can see we got an order of mints. We've got our order of eucalyptus stuff. We've got our maples and our citrus plants. We've got our hibiscus. We've got our bean plants. And then we've got those pesky little willows and euphorbs. And so you can see that there's many different types of plants that have these mangrove characteristics. There's even a fern mangrove. And so with all these different lineages of plants, they have a pretty large distribution worldwide. The highest diversity is in the east, so you can see the species richness is just like the measurement of amount of species there are. And so those are going to be higher in Oceania, around this area. You can't actually even see me. Over near like Southeast Asia sort of thing. Didn't even realize my mouse wasn't showing up. The total area in 2000, the most recent statistic I could get, it was about 137,000 square kilometers. That's about the size of Bangladesh or Greece or the state of New York. But 75% of mangroves are found in just 15 countries. So for example, the Sundarbans, largest mangrove forest in the world, 10,000 square kilometers, 60% of it's in Bangladesh, 40% is in India. And there are 2.5 million people that live near that forest. So mangroves have a huge impact on human life, as we'll see later. And the general distribution of all mangroves is about between 30 degrees north latitude and 30 degrees south latitude. So here's a colorized map if you're into that sort of thing. This is from the Smithsonian Ocean website, fantastic source for more mangroves. But you can see that our highest biodiversity of mangroves is really over in this Oceania area. With only like a couple over here in the New World. We get some boring stuff, but they're pretty cool. So with this widespread distribution, one of these adaptations that I keep talking about, well, let me get started. So first off, if you're going to plant and you're going to live in water, you need to not drown yourself. That's just a general good rule. They don't have gills or anything, so how are they going to live? Prop roots, quite literally propping themselves out of the water. So if you look at the picture on the right, you can see that we have all of our green material, all of our photosynthetic parts are going to be above the water, even at high tide. That tide's going to fluctuate, but most of those green leaves should be out of the water when it does, so that way the plant is still able to go through photosynthesis. And on the picture on the left, you can actually see one of these prop roots. It's got these little white dots on it. Those are lenticels. Those allow for greater gas exchange between the mangrove roots and the rest of the environment, so that way those flooded roots are not getting any gas whatsoever. They're getting water, plenty of water, but no gas. So by having these lenticels, those airborne roots are able to make up for the loss of porous and air-filled soil that mangroves do not have. And so these prop roots can support so much more life. So you can see here on the opening slide, you saw tons of fish and minnows. You can see some here on the left thing. You've got some sponges going on here. Sometimes there's oysters as well. You can also see in the center photo that the mangroves actually create, as compared to this slide here, where we got some wave action going on. It's a much calmer environment in that center photo. So mangroves do provide a wave break because the roots absorb a lot of the energy from the ocean. So a little more calmer environment. And then on the right, you can see an example of a buttress root. It provides more lateral support rather than vertical support. And so you're in this ocean, you're in a salty environment. Plants, surprise, spoiler, they don't like salt. So how are you going to deal with that? Well, first off, humans deal with that by sweating. Mangroves deal with that by also sweating. So they do have salt glands. So ideally, there's still like some science out there on it. They're still trying to do research. Ideally, the roots are about 90% impermeable to salt. And so there's some ideas about why that is. Some people think it's because in plants you have vacuoles, and vacuoles are kind of like the bladder of a plant cell. They keep all the excess water and other chemicals and such there. So they're thinking, people think that the roots their cells have vacuoles that immobilize the salt there, and it doesn't get transported through the xylem, through the ducts, through the rest of the plant. But what salt does go through gets exuded through these salt glands, and you can see the glands in picture A. They're marked by the little yellow things. And then on the side, there on the right, you can see the actual granules of salt on the leaves. Now, a common misconception is that the yellow mangrove leaves are sacrificial leaves and are getting pumped full of salt, so you're going to just die. That's not what's happening. Those leaves are just dying. They're not. There's no reason. They're not getting pumped with salt and then dying. They're just dying. And so the yellow is because all the chlorophyll and all the excess nitrogen is being pulled out by the plant, so it can use it for new leaves instead of just dropping in the ocean. So that's what's happening. All mangroves leaves pretty much have salt. So we've dealt with salt, we've dealt with rising waters, but now let's say we're not a red mangrove. Let's say that we don't experience prop roots. Let's say we're a black mangrove, and we're in very muddy soil. We still are not able to get as much air as we need for gas exchange. So what do? We use straws. So these are pneumatophores. And if you look at the picture on the right, you can actually trace where the roots are. You can actually see the roots that are underground by looking at where these pneumatophores are. And these are literally straws about the size of like a chapstick. And they have little lenticels. So on the picture on the left, you can see the little pores. And so those allow for greater gas exchange. So like you can think with this wet waterlogged soil, you're able to actually stick your straw up and get some gas exchange going on so you can get your essential nutrients. And so these lenticels are super cool because if you look at this, it's a very, very spongy tissue. Again, not the size of the chapstick, and you can see the little the gaps there. And so you can see from left to right, we've got a lenticel just starting to form near E, and then that LC, we're starting to get a bigger lenticel, and then finally with that CO all the way on the right, that's a fully formed lenticel. It's got a greater surface area to allow for more gas exchange so the plant can breathe, even when soil is flooded. So that's pretty cool, but it gets even better. My favorite mangrove trait, my favorite adaptation, what really turned me on to them is the way that they reproduce, right? So a lot of plants, they literally just throw things to the wind and let things happen. So you can have male plants with male flowers, female plants with female flowers. You can have a plant with male and female. You can have the same plant have the same flower. Mangroves are hermaphrodites, so they really just do whatever they want. And so once they are pollinated and they develop the seeds, typically plants will either just develop the seeds in like a pod, if you think about legumes, or like some of the rose families, so like apples and pears, they develop a fruit. Mangroves, they don't need any of that excess dispersal stuff going on. They are viviparous, meaning they give live birth. So after they're pollinated, they will kind of develop a small fruit, but as you can see, the plant starts to develop while still attached to its mother plant. And so you've got this big propagule. They're probably about like maybe a foot to about 2 feet long, and they'll start developing on the plant. They're denser on the bottom, and so they're able to grow and develop and store a lot of this energy. The green is photosynthetic, so they are able to generate their own energy. And they're kind of relatively protective from the sea elements because they're on the mother, like any good mother does. They take care of their youth. And so this happens for a few months, and then at the end of it all, like any good mother does, the mangroves drop them in the ocean and tell them good luck. So these little propagules will float around for like up to a year sometimes. They're just kind of searching around for like a good environment to grow in. Sometimes they will fall and land right in the mud, so like black mangroves, etc. They'll just kind of land right next to the mother and be like, hey, I'm going to chill here for the rest of my life. And so they'll start developing roots. So you can see that kind of on the right side of that image there. You've got some root development going on. There are some ideas out there about like maybe they're sideways at first, and then as they reach maturity or a place to grow, they'll change their density and kind of go this way. I haven't been able to find any scientific sources. If you find some, please send them my way. I would love to see them, but we're not quite sure if that's what's going on. Really what it is that dense bottom is allowing them to kind of float around until they get lodged in mud, either due to storm surge or low tide, etc. But once they do lodge themselves in the mud after like a year or so of searching around, they'll just hang out, and then more mangroves will gather. So on the left, you can see we got a nice little trio starting to grow, and then on the right, we've got a whole like a group of mangroves growing together, starting to form an island like the one you see in the background on the left. And so this is kind of how land reclamation happens. These mangroves will float around in these little pods, they'll stick together, they'll stick in the mud or the sand or the silt, and then they'll just kind of grow and develop into an island that is able to support all sorts of wildlife. So first off, like we got that chital up there. It's kind of like a deer relative living amongst those pneumatophores. We've got some monkeys in the bottom left. We've got a crab. We've got some oysters. We've got sharks in the top right. We've got manatees and sea cows. And then, oh, what's that? A Bengal tiger. Yeah, Bengal tigers live in mangroves. They live in mangrove forests. That's over in Bangladesh in the Sundarbans. So just another example why that place. These are such cool plants. So they support a huge diversity of life. They support different types of otters. There's some dolphins actually that live in mangroves. Super cool stuff. And so it's one thing to look at these pictures and be like, oh, okay, it supports a lot of life. It's another thing to be a scientist and write a paper about it. So this is my favorite paper ever. And it's titled, very aptly, Mangroves Enhance the Biomass of Coral Reef Fish Communities in the Caribbean. All right, so some things. First off, yes, small sample size. They only had 6 different sites that they sampled from. But if you're thinking about setting up, what they did to set this experiment up is that they had coral reefs. They had like 3 coral reefs, 3 coral reefs. These 3 had mangrove forests associated with them, and these 3 did not. So if you think about in the whole wide universe, you just heard that whole talk about how it's difficult to find a planet supporting Earth life. Now try to go find a planet that has mangroves and coral reefs and find one. So in the whole universe, this is kind of where we were able to, and this is in Belize, not we, but the scientist Mumby in 2004, this paper has like 1,000 citations. They were able to find a latitudinally discrete sort of way to sample these mangrove communities. So we can see the ones with on the left photo, we've got the fishes are the ones without mangroves but still have a reef, and the ones with the trees, those do have mangrove forests and coral reefs. And the whole lifestyle strategy here of these young fishes that live in the reefs is they're born in seagrass. So we're going all the way to the photo on the right there. So they're born into seagrass and they hide out in the seagrass till they get big enough. So they're hiding from predators, and then they get too big to hide anymore, so they've got to move on. So the ones that have mangroves nearby will go straight into the mangroves, and they'll hide out from the predators and will develop till they go into the patch reefs or isolated coral reef patches. The ones without mangroves, they just got to go straight to the coral reef patches and fend for themselves. Then going to be bigger fish there, and they will get eaten. And that is evidenced by the lower biomasses of these. This is just one species, but the supplementary information had so much stuff with that. And so without mangroves, these fish, when they finally get to the fore reef, the big reef, they have, without mangroves, a much lower biomass than the reefs that had mangroves to kind of support this successional, this lifestyle of these fishes. And so I'm about to throw tons of numbers at you. Just bear with me. So first off, to do this, they sampled 100,000 individual fish. I've never seen, I cannot even fathom 100,000 individual fish at one time. I do not know. They just had a lot of dedication for this. And it was 164 different species. And so then if you look at this little table right here, the important things are the things that are highlighted. So we've got our biomass increases and our significant factors. If you're unfamiliar with significant factors, that is like a statistical term that's used when you do statistics with science to be like, yes, this is a naturally occurring phenomenon. It's backed up by statistics. It's not anecdotal. It's not a one-off. This is something that actually exists. And so if we look at these factors, M is going to mean that the mangroves were the significant factors. So the mangroves are the reason why there was a biomass increase. R is going to be the reef was a reason. S is going to be the site, the specific like island was a reason. And then NS means there was no significance. So there were 2 instances of no significance here. But of the rest of the fish that they looked at least for these selected species, and again, supplemental information had so much data. There's only 2 other instances. There's the O. Christosaurus in the patch reef, and then we've got the L. Apotus in the Montastreo reef that did not have mangrove significance. All the other sites had significant factors that were mangroves. So the mangroves were the reason for the fish biomass increase. And in some cases, that was up to 2,600% biomass increase of fish. That's wild for one specific thing to be the reason why there was 2,600% more of another thing. That is insane, especially if we think about evolution, how throughout millions of years, these organisms have grown to depend on each other to grow in such a manner. So even beyond that, if we start thinking about, all right, so there's more fish now, what does that do for us? Well, one, people eat fish. So like mangoes are important for diets. And so we look at ecosystem services. These are going to be things that supply value to like humans, economically sort of thing. Often you can think about these like pollinators. Pollinators are a huge ecosystem service. Without pollinators, our food system would not exist today because we don't have the time to go hand pollinate everything. So some of the services that mangroves provide, we've got barrier islands. They provide a wind and water break. They immobilize sediment and pollutants to the crop roots. Things get trapped there. They create land, as I've talked about earlier. They sequester carbon 10 times as efficient as land forests do, first off, all right? And they have a huge cultural impact. There's like a temple in India that was built around this mangrove, the specific mangrove there. This provides a livelihood for people. 2.5 million people live near the Sundarbans. That is children play amongst mangroves. The entire communities live and die by these mangroves. There's also ecotourism. So that's where people go. They pay money to go on vacation, to go visit an environmentally natural environment site. And so you're bringing money into an economy because people want to go experience this wildlife. When they experience this wildlife, they have a better appreciation for it. And then the people who give them the money to show the people of wildlife, they have a better appreciation because now like that supports their livelihoods. So these are super important trees. So naturally, as we are wont to do as humans, we tend to screw up. Yes, this is the Sundarbans. Yes, this is the place where the Bengal tiger lives and 2.5 million other people live. Yes, this is an oil spill. This happened on December 9th, 2014. You can see some mudskippers here and some crabs here. And there was a spill. There was a tanker that crashed in, another boat crashed into the tanker, and they spilt 350,000 liters of oil. You can see it all along these mangroves here. You can see like the different tides. You can see that the oil is sticking there. At the time, the shipping minister said there would be no major impacts from the oil spill. Yet there's endangered dolphins. Yeah, they got a little screwed over. The endangered otters, they got screwed over. The humans that touched the oil, yeah, their hair fell out. So major impact, I don't know, man. But this is a one-off thing. These oil spills don't happen every day. When they do happen, it's a huge issue. But it's one of those things where it's like, all right, we need to make sure they don't happen. We should probably not be shipping oil through a UNESCO World Heritage Site, or if we are, we need to have a little bit more precautions in place so we don't spill oil everywhere. So beyond just oil spills messing with everything, there's other threats to mangroves. Deforestation, either for aquaculture, so like growing like artificial fish or shrimps, which is weird because mangroves support fish biomass, as we know. Why would we get rid of them for that? Agriculture, so a lot of that's going to be rice, so you think rice paddies, palm oil, and it's, to me, it's weird thinking about evolutionary adaptations. Over millions of years, these plants have converged on these traits because of the environment that they're in, and now we're cutting them all down and putting something that didn't evolve for that. Yes, we can do that, but the upkeep is going to be way more than just letting it be, and harnessing the natural biomass of fish and the natural benefits that we get from mangroves, rather than just putting rice or whatever. And then climate change. The big thing with climate change is sea level rise, specifically with mangroves. They can weather a storm. They're pretty hardy plants in that aspect, but if they lenticels get covered up, they're going to drown. They're going to die. And then all of a sudden we've got a bunch of dead trees everywhere, and that's not super useful because it's not like the lumber, wood, etc. So here's a study from Richard and Frias, published in 2016. Shows land use of deforested mangrove patches in 2012. It's important to note. The study actually was conducted from the year 2000 to 2012. So over those 12 years, we can see how mangrove land was changed. Up to 20% of mangrove loss at individual sites over those 12 years. And where is this? Oh yeah, the hotspot of mangrove biodiversity. So that's cool. And it's only gotten a bit worse since then. So lots of issues regarding protecting these wonderful trees. And so like, what can we do? How can we as humans help out these plants that are probably miles and miles away from us if we're not in their actual range? Watch what you eat. If you're going to eat fish, shrimp, get it from a sustainable source. Again, this can be done sustainably with mangroves in the picture. We don't need to remove mangroves. Vote. This is important, and I'm not, you just think about the environment when you go to vote. Think about the effects on your environment. Earlier this year in the United States, some water protection rules were removed because people don't understand how watersheds work. Everything is connected with watersheds. All that the drain from up here in Wisconsin goes all the way down the Mississippi to where these mangroves are. And if we're not protecting our streams and rivers, even if they are directly connected or not directly connected, if we don't protect our waterways, it's going to have drastic impacts on our ecosystem. Beyond voting, donate. I understand that times are tough. I understand that there are bigger fish to fry, quite literally right now with this virus. But keep in mind some of these organizations, so like the Global Mangrove Alliance, Mangrove Action Project, Mangrove Watch, some of these different organizations that help reforest mangroves, that help educate people about mangroves, that conserve mangroves. Make sure you support those organizations so that way these wonderful trees can still live. And then lastly, learn. By you listening to me gush about these trees tonight, you have already done a huge part because now you actually know about mangroves. You know some of the issues. And as humans, we can't make a difference if we don't know things. So please continue to educate yourselves, continue to learn new things, continue to be active on those things because that's the only way that we're going to make the world a better place. So that is all I have. So thank you very much.
Go to nerdnite.com to find a Nerd Nite event near you, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for our latest presentation.